everyone is enjoying the conference. I certainly am. I had the benefit of participating in Kay and Chris's discussion last hour, and it was pretty fabulous. And I think as we move forward and consider these notions of culture and the implications, I think we need to be incredibly mindful of those who came before us and the impact on our experiences cumulatively on this beautiful work that we have the privilege of doing today. So in that vein, I'm going to take a few moments and read the land statement on racial and social justice for the ELK conference this year. With reverence, we would like to acknowledge the indigenous history of our state, originally home of the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Comanche, Shoshone, and Ute nations. The landscape of Colorado and those who live here have experienced many social and cultural traumas since the formation of the Colorado Territory in 1861. These include the subjugation of the indigenous nations that culminated in the 1864 Sand Creek Massacre, which resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Arapaho and Cheyenne people. Colorado has also been the site of the 1880 anti-Chinese riot and burning of Denver's budding Chinatown, the 1914 Ludlow Massacre of Workers, the unjust internment and subsequent forced forfeiture of the property and community of 7,000 Japanese Americans at Camp Amache, Grenada Relocation Center from 1942 to 1945. And countless other traumas experienced both publicly and privately by its inhabitants. These traumas continue today. Our historical neighborhoods of color are threatened by gentrification. Five Points, an area in Denver known for its long history of Black-owned businesses, is now home to only 20 Black-owned businesses. Like many states, Colorado is just starting to come to terms with celebrating the historically white civic leaders through statues, street names, and neighborhood names, while grappling with some leaders such as Robert W. Speer and Benjamin Stapleton sort affiliation with racism and white supremacy. These traumas are not limited to gender, race, or ethnicity. We honor the experience of the multiple identities of each person.
Thank you, Bridget. Thank you very much for reading that for us.
Okay. Technical difficulties, forgive me. And so now, as we, consider, the somber history of the citizens in our country, I think this is a beautiful opportunity and a nice segue to the conversation that we're going to have today. In our short time together, I hope to provide you the opportunity to explore what it means to teach in a new way that is reflective of not only our experiences, but how those experiences interact with our students' experiences. So the title of today's presentation is We Teach Who We Are, a call to consciousness and accountability. And if you don't know by now, with my technical difficulties and my great introduction from my colleague, I am Dr. Bridget Mitchell, and I am an instructor with CCC Online within the community college system. So today we will look at a couple of topics, and in doing so, I will try to interrelate some real-time experiential, examples to kind of ground your understanding and looking at these ideas in a new way and how we apply them to our classroom settings. So today we're going to define the context of our own cultures, review the characteristics of teaching, and understand the difference between cultural competent and cultural responsive teaching. I cannot be a teacher without exposing who I am. Now I'm going to let that sit with you for a moment. For me, when I came up on this quote, it really moved me and caused me to think about myself and how I present myself to my students. And not only that, but with my colleagues in preparation for creating student experiences collectively. So I would like to read this just one more time. And so I promise I won't try to preach a sermon today, but I hope that you really are able to look within yourself. So I cannot be a teacher without exposing who I am. This idea is really important as we really dig deeply in who we are, and should give us create an opportunity for an introspective exercise and looking at how we facilitate learning environments actively in the context of our students' needs and interests. Especially in the context of our social political underpinnings of our society. Now, all of us who've had that 2020 experience, I just read on Facebook, been there, done that. Our 2020 experience, we know how we have been inundated with myriad of messages in our microwave culture of providing information to folks. And that comes from social media, our television, but some of those topics have been really heavy, and really difficult to ponder, even with for ourselves, as we are the professors of information to our students. And some of those entail, and I don't have to, I think, many of us know the unspoken, the pandemic. How did that impact each of us, and what is the ongoing impact in the work that we do and how we work together? And then institutional racism. Those are the really big topics that we are now finding being interwoven in the context of our classroom environment. So in mentioning those, I want each of you to think about how we support our students online. Think about how these topics manifest themselves in our classrooms, and what is your initial reaction? Is your initial reaction avoidance? And I am here to teach my content area. My content area is education, by the way. And so it's a really comfortable place to be to teach the theory of education. Or do you dare to explore with your students some of these topics in the context of creating the world for tomorrow? So some of the big challenges that we have that arise out of thinking about who we are and aligning who we are with our classroom is that inclination that we may need to move far away from our content expertise. So think about that. And then also the really uncomfortable position is that we're often scaffolding our own understanding in the context of our students' understanding. Now, I want everyone to take a moment and think about that. We are scaffolding our own understanding of the pandemic, of institutional racism, of all of those really big, heavy topics as we too are trying to support our students in their understanding. So as we continue with this conversation, I want us to understand that you are the catalyst for the opportunities for your students. You are the catalyst. You are the guide. You are the sage. You are the facilitator of this learning for your students. So who are you? Some of you may want to think of this rhetorically, and we think of all the great philosophers and we ponder this notion of where we are today and why we are. But I would like you to think of yourself in the context of your culture. And to really illustrate that area, I wanted to bring to you Urie Bronfenbrenner's model of ecological theory. And for me, this grounds most of the work that I do in relation to how I support my students. And the general idea is that we are all products of environmental influences. And so, as you might know, those can come in a myriad of different ways, correct? So we are born in a family, we live in the communities in society, and guess what? We're all a part of the world. So in the context of this ecological model, we need to think of ourselves and how we are shaped and formed, and how we are prepared, and I'm going to put in air quotes, to profess, to teach our students in a really meaningful way. And that context has two forms. First, what we're born with. We are born, and I love this as an early childhood education teacher, but we're all born, and when a baby's was born, we know how exciting that is. And what are the questions that we generally ask? Is it a boy? Is it a girl? What, you know, does it look like mom? Does it look like dad? So we all have these inherent characteristics from birth, and those are just going to be, those are the given based on the context of your parents, of your lineage. And then we have another aspect of who we are, and that really does bring home Bronfenbrenner's notion of the environment. What are you born into? And I want each of you, and I'm going to use the term to think, and I want you to get out your proverbial mirrors and really try to think about all of those components that have shaped who you are. For example, I grew up in a predominantly African-American community. That shaped who I am, and also shaped my perspective of the world. What school did you go to? Was it a private school? Was it a public school? What is your religion of choice? What cultural dynamics does your family hold? What are your values, customs, beliefs? What are those things that make you you? What is your cool? So the interesting caveat is, while we have nature and nurture, we are born with characteristics and we are refined based on the environment. These elements are often very difficult to change. So how pretty much Bridget is who she was when she was 17. Now that is very scary to me, but she is who she was when she was 17. And it requires quite a bit to shift our paradigm and our thinking around new ideas. And that it culminates from more education and differing experiences. Keep your mirror out. So just for the fun of it, I thought I'd share the cultures that I belong to. As you can see, I am, I'm a US citizen, so maybe that you can't see that, but I'm African American. But did you also know that in my background, I'm European, Native American? You can see that I'm a female. I'm an educator, classical vocalist, married, a mother, Midwesterner, pet owner, and I might add lover, blended family, and first generation college student, and urbanite. Now, when you consider all of these, and I highlighted them for your convenience, you all look at me and say, she's an African American female. And that's pretty cool in itself. I love being me. I love the skin that I'm in. But the more unique element of our culture are all those things you cannot see. We each hold those. We each have those. So I ask you to look in your mirror and think about what your unique configuration is. Because who you are can inadvertently impact how you support or stifle the experiences that you provide for students. And a quick example, I'm a first generation college student. So for my experience, I worked 3 jobs. I was a single mom. I did it all and I did it well. And so when one of my students called me last semester and said, Dr. Mitchell, I just want to let you know my circumstance. I thought, what is your circumstance? This happens for us each semester. And she said, well, I am actually a single mom of 3, my first time in college. I worked 2 jobs, one during the week and one on the weekend. And my first inclination was, okay, girl, well, that's all of our story. But my shift was, wait, My student has come to have a conversation with me so I can modify, so I can create an opportunity for her to have this learning experience. I share that short example so you understand how who we are can bleed into how we support our students. So what is our impact? What is the impact of your culture on teaching? And I like to call it the legacy of instruction, the compelling why. Why is it important for you to know who you are? Why is it important for you to know who you are? And the first is really you are integral in shaping student perspectives. You help them with their interpretations and understanding of the world. And if you come to them with bias, like my previous example of, all students are super students because Bridget was a super student, then you lose opportunities to support your students in meaningful way on their inquiry, their exploration, their experimentation with the ideas that are presented in the class and those that are presented from the society at large. So the legacy of our instruction, we gift our students with the capacity for critical thinking and critical understanding of the world around them. And then workforce development. Our students are hopefully going to work in our communities. They are going to be dynamic contributors to this world that we live in. They are going to make it better. We're going to have better roads, better opportunities, better policies because of our students. And but who we are could impede that if the only focus is to teach calculus. If our only focus is to teach physics, I don't know why I'm going for all of these difficult subjects, but we have to think about our discipline beyond the discipline and the impact on the community. And then finally, it really does have an impact on the community at large. And for my students in education, more and more I see these really tough topics that, the whole world is grappling with, like gun violence in schools, manifest in my discussion and assignments. And I am able to support them. If I'm able to support them in a meaningful and rich way, maybe their generation will be able to create the solve for these. Maybe their generation will be able to create best practices for these social ills. So what does it mean to teach? Now, I, like many of you, started the profession. I actually started in 2000, was my first teaching opportunity. And my mentor talked to me about, well, to be a great professor, and I'm just going to use her, mannerisms. To be a great professor, you need to know your content. That is the focus. So I learned and I was trained to know my content, regurgitate it to my students, have them give it back and give them an A. So that was the crux of teaching. However, teaching have more dynamic elements than that. As teachers, we are really impacting tomorrow. And I hope you guys are hearing these common themes. So we have a cool job. We are really creating the opportunities for tomorrow. So what are those characteristics of teaching that many of us, and I call them the soft skills of teaching, that are so integral to this beautiful work that we do? And I don't know if all of you get goosebumps, but I do. And when I'm teaching, and it's really hard for when we're in an online environment because we are not close to our students. So this is a great reminder for us to think about, what are the soft skills of teaching? First, teaching is relational. It is we provide information in the context of shared human experiences. I cannot teach if I don't know. That's a new quote, so somebody write that down, okay? So we are teaching our experience. It is a fellowship. It is a bringing together. It's a hodgepodge. It's a family reunion. Only that we are doing that in the context of a core content area, which is really cool, because then, then we can build in our theory and best practices. And so online, I find this aspect to really manifest in my introduction discussions. So for those of you who have introduction discussion and you check in once a week and you think, it's just introduction, I want you to relook at that introduction, because that gives you a window into what your students are interested in. It gives you a window to where your students have been and where they want to go. So that is really, oh gosh, okay, is anybody else excited? It really, really does provide the segue for how you facilitate that learning experience for the semester. The next, it is purposeful. You support the understanding in real time with the relevance to the situation. And for me, online in my class, we have something called the virtual cafe. Many of you have some version of it in your classroom. Well, at the beginning of the course, I set my students up. I tell them, hey, we've got this cool place to hang out. And in this place that we hang out, you can bring whatever you want. Bring those current events, bring those new ideas, and let's share what we're interested in together. And then it's reciprocal. And I should have bolded this and highlighted this in yellow, the even exchange between the teacher and the learner. This is probably the most coolest aspect of teaching that we often forget about, because our role is the teacher, is the instructor, is the professor. And I hope that you guys are going to hear the shift that we are facilitators of the learning experience. We facilitate. And in facilitation, that means we can participate. And so that is really a really awesome opportunity. And for me in the online environment, I'm going to just really have to, do a shout out for the discussions, but this is where you invite students to share their thoughts. So in a discussion for my class, of course, they're going to answer the question that was already organized in the class, but then I'm going to give them a summary and I'm going to say, share your thoughts. Ooh, are anybody getting excited about this exchange that we will have as students? So you have to know yourself to be able to participate in teaching in this really rich way. And last, it is future oriented. And I don't, many of our classes, we have our core modules. There's 5 modules and 10 assignments, and we're all going through the motions of the semester, but please know what the end result is. We are sending our students into the real world for the greater good. We are impacting humanity. And in my class, I do that with the what if discussion. So now that you have learned more, what are your thoughts? Now that you have more experience around this topic, what will you do? So the opportunity to really create this good stuff in your classroom is really to acknowledge and honor the soft skills of teaching. So the last section that I'm going to go talk about today is creating culturally responsive learning environments. And we all have had some experience to cultural responsiveness. So again, okay, get your handkerchief out, dust your mirror off. I need you to be looking at you. Okay, there you go, Kay. I need you to be looking at you so that you can go on this journey with me. And so we're going to move from cultural competence to cultural responsiveness. And I want to say, and I've heard it in several of the other sessions. It's okay because we're all growing in this way. So I too, so while I feel as if I'm a novice in the presentation of this material, because I learned every day about myself, I learned every day about the topic, I learned every day in my interactions with other people. So this is a growth opportunity that we have all the time. We are lifelong learners in the responsiveness to working with other human beings. This is a human experience. And so no one has all the right answers. No one has full mastery. We are all on this journey of discovery and learning together. So cultural competence is the ability to interact effectively with people of different cultures. Now, most of us who have been in this field for, in the past 5 to 10 years, we are really familiar with this topic and we've made those adjustments. Some of our institutions systemically have made these adjustments in how we've developed our courses. I know with CCC Online and the development of early education courses, we will have some intentionality around cultural competence and also building in content specific to support our students' understanding of cultural competence. So we have some mastery, we've developed some kind of repertoire for working with students across cultures. And the beauty of this is we don't really have to try too hard as far as the configuration of our classrooms, because many of us get a roster. And I want you to just go back and remember Bronfenbrenner's ecological model. And so no matter what your name is, and no matter what region of the state you live in or what community you live in, they all bring a unique culture. So your roster has 30 amazing, incredible cultures to explode and to be integrated across the course material in a really rich, robust way. So we would like to move from that to an awareness. Cultural responsiveness is an awareness, your awareness of your own cultural identity and views about differences and the ability to learn. Okay, stop the boat. You see the and the ability to learn and build on the varying cultural and community norms of your students. Okay, can anybody remember facilitation? Human experience, it's all coming full circle. So one thing to remember is that none of the work that we do is in isolation. Regardless of how pretty our courses look, the human element is what makes our courses the course. Every semester, I have a different feel to my classroom. Every semester, there are different opportunities, there are new topics that pop up to be addressed because we all are different and interacting with the information in our world in a very different way. So there are 5 principles to cultural responsiveness. And I'm really trying to thread, the idea of how can you identify these elements in your online environment, because I think for many of us, those are the questions. Well, how do we do it? We really don't know our students. And I'm really going to lean in on those discussion opportunities. Those are rich opportunities for us to have those discussions. So the first is a principle of respect, to value diversity and promote respect for all students' contexts. This is really important for us as instructors because our students, they are culturally diverse. And so some of the information that's presented in our discussions, we stand back and say, wow, that's interesting. And often we have a tendency to want to correct it. Well, that was interesting. However, this is the answer. So really, this really helps us to be cognizant of valuing those differences while also allowing students to grow in their understanding. And then the principle of inquiry, and I call this the magic principle. This is the best of all: to question, to evaluate data, resources, and practices, to test out new approaches to foster equitable student experiences and outcomes. This one principle has so much power in our class. It is the what ifs. What if? How so? What will it take? Moving our students from the theory to the practice, to emerging best practice, helping them to see new ways to construct meaning out of the basic information that we provide. Because if we're doing our jobs really well, we're only providing the basics, because the dreams come from our students. So the principle of inquiry is the magic principle. Then the principle to change, to disrupt patterns and systems of inequity, to promote all students' academic success and well-being, to be a change agent to address specific inequity. In my course of early childhood education, one of the hot topics, and I don't know why it's a hot topic, but one of the hot topics is the voucher system. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the voucher system, it is a system of providing families vouchers in underserved communities so they have access to high quality education of their choice. And this topic really clearly illustrates that principle of change, because that topic, like no other in my courses, really push my students to think about it in a different way. So it's so cool to hear their ideas. I think we should tear the entire system down. We like that, right, Kay? We like this. We should tear the entire system down and create something new. So, but to give that levity, to give that capacity so students can begin to dream about new ways in your classroom. And then principle of leading learning. We are the facilitators. And so this is to model reflective practice and foster a growth mindset. And I'm gonna just, again, in our discussions, we can do that. I am very vulnerable with my students, and I'll say, wow, so my experience with that looked like this. Thanks for sharing your experience with that. I think I need more information around this topic. The opportunity just to really dig deeply into learning, aside from the superficial content expertise that we often present to our students. And then the principle of social justice. And this is kind of connected to the section we did before, but the work that we do in our classrooms impact tomorrow, impact society. And for myself, I teach teachers. This is really important, the principle of social justice. I want every child to have the quality and quantity of life they deserve. I want every child, and I can't do that alone. It's going to take my students to champion these ideas in their workplaces to be able to have that impact. So, and we only have a few minutes, and I apologize. I get really excited about this topic. This is really good stuff for me. But so let's talk about the how. So Bridget, you told us about the why and all the connections and this humanity. So how do we do it? And and these are like really practical. This is a really practical guide to getting you to incorporate some of these ideas into your own online learning environment. The first is communication of high expectations. And in undergraduate courses, I find this is really like the rule setting around the conversation conversations we're going to have. It's the guardrails, if you will, so that students can have the freedom of expression, but respectfully to their colleagues. So that is the first component. Then active teaching methods. So I think teachers are, we facilitate learning, but for me, active teaching methods, it means to follow the lead of my students. And this is really critical, but follow the lead of the students. So what are they interested in? How do I incorporate that and how do I align it? This is where our expertise comes in. How do I align it with the content that I'm teaching? How do I make it relevant? And then we are the facilitator, inclusion of cultural and linguistic diverse students. And for this, I just want to note, yes, many times we do not organize the roster for our classes. However, we can impact the engagement of our students and how we support them, the comfort level of participating in such dynamic learning environment. And then cultural sensitivity, to honor culture, but without just stating right or wrong, this or that, without the black and white of the learning, really letting it be this fluid process and exploratory opportunity for our students. Reshaping the curriculum. Okay, facilitators, we have to be present. We need to be really present so we know when we can have those doable shifts to meet the needs of our students. Student controlled discourse, and this may be a little scary for some, but if you have completed the first recommendation, communicating high expectations, guess what? The student controlled discourse is fluid and seamless and respectful, and it honors each other. So, and then last, small group instruction, knowing when to connect the dots of conversations. That's one of the most difficult aspects of the online environment for myself. And I've been doing it for many years and I still struggle with that. How do I connect, one student's idea with another student's idea in a meaningful way so that they too can have the opportunity to have some meaningful discourse. So, and I know I'm getting close to time, but what I thought would be fun is to give a real life example. So in my classes, as I mentioned, I teach early childhood education. So we talk about Skinner and Vygotsky and Piaget. And I do that really well. I love those. I love all the theory. And so that's really easy for me. But every now and then, those elements pop into our classes unexpectedly. And when they do, often they have implications, cultural implications, to include gender, race, ethnicity, different cultures, socioeconomic status, policy. And so I think around 2013, and I love this example because it was one of the most exciting times that I had with students. Alicia Silverstone, one of our famous actresses, was in the media because she pre-chewed her baby's food and gave it to him. And I saw it on the news and I thought, that is so interesting that they're talking about this on the news. I pop into my virtual cafe and guess what my students were talking about? Pre-mastication. They were so pumped up about this topic. But it was interesting because they were talking about it from just what the thought that they had based on their experience. So some said, well, she's so rich, why don't she get a blender? And then she can make her own gourmet baby food, right? Well, I can't believe the germs that the baby is getting through all of this, right? And so I saw that and I thought, Bridget, it would be really, really fun to jump in, but not only to jump in, but how do I jump in? So the first thing I did was go into the virtual cafe and I created a context for this exploration. I created the ground rules for reporting the new knowledge. And what I did was said, hey, I saw that on the news too. It is really interesting to me as well. I wonder what else we could learn. So then I went into active teaching mode, and I provided my students with four reading pieces of reading materials, 2 for and 2 against, and I gave it to them. And I'm like, cannot wait to hear what you learn from this. And of course, my students were like, oh my gosh, Dr. Mitchell, you're so cool. Yes, thank you. We're going to read this material. And then I was the facilitator. I engaged in the discussion as an active participant. At no time was I the expert. I acknowledged that my own understanding was limited around this topic, and I didn't know everything. I know a few things, but not everything. So I was willing to go on the journey with my students. And then this inclusion of culture and linguistically diverse students, I went to the primary, some of my students call it the real discussion for that week. And I rallied everyone else, hey, stop what you're doing. You have to come to this cafe and see what we're talking about. It's pretty cool. And I also posted it in my announcements and said, hey, there's an opportunity to participate in this really rich discussion. And then the cultural sensitivity. I facilitated the conversation without inserting my own biases of what was right and what was wrong. At no time did I allude to what I believed about this topic. Now that is hard for those of us who like to profess, because we know it all. We're just prepared to tell it all, but I at no time did I share. And that was actually one of the catalysts for the fun opportunity that we shared together as students. And then reshaping the curricula. I increased opportunities for students to meet those module competencies. I created an alternative assignment. So I said, hey, this was so cool. It was so fun talking about that. Do you want to do an assignment about it? Of course they did. Some of the best work ever. And I posed to them in some of those, remember that principle of inquiry? What if questions? What if you're working with a parent who is in favor of pre-mastication? What if you are a center director and you're creating a manual for families thinking about health nutrition? What if that? I think you get the point. But so the last is student-controlled discourse. I acknowledged and supported the different discussion threads. So in that virtual cafe, I knew you guys wish you were there, but we had such cool topics: nutrition, culture, parenting, policy, and I, as the facilitator, was able to grab those topics and put them in context for students and say, hey, it sounds like we're talking about nutrition. What is the appropriate amount of protein for a baby, for a toddler? Tell me that. Can they get it from pre-mastication? And then last, group instruction. I managed the class discussion for the module, and I guided information of the small group discussions. And remember, this is all in the context of being the facilitator. So you and culturally responsive teaching, in summary, as you can see, it's pretty exciting, actually. So from my perspective, but for you to understand yourself, and so it's just the intentionality. Be aware of your own biases toward facilitating a robust and engaging learning environment. In my example of pre-mastication, I could have stopped that and said, you know, my grandma told me this, you know, this theorist said this, so we're done with the conversation. But instead of doing that, I entered that journey with my students, putting aside my own biases to support the learning opportunity. Authenticity, be real, and acknowledge your own discovery and creations of new meaning. And that probably is the funnest aspect of this. I can truly say, I didn't know that before. And my students love it. Oh, Dr. Mitchell, you don't know everything? Yeah, this is new for me too. I thought I knew everything. This is pretty cool. And then reciprocity, learn with and from your students. So to roll your sleeves up, elbow to elbow, jump into those topics in a really intentional and meaningful way, and learn with your students, from your students. And some of the beautiful cultural elements from that, the story of pre-mastication, students told their family experience with this. Well, you know what my mom did, and you know what that was connected to, and you know, beautiful, beautiful richness of the curriculum, which I could not have created without their participation. And then finally, dare to follow the lead of your students. Dare to experiment, explore, and have the flexibility to make those shifts to create dynamic learning environments. So now I think that concludes my presentation, and I will open it up for any questions or comments that you might have at this time.
I am scrolling through. I don't think we have any, it doesn't look like we have any questions, but if I missed something, if I missed your question, please put it back in chat. Lots of great comments. Of course, people are requesting your slides. Are you willing to make your slides available?
Yes.
Okay, cool. We can go ahead and do that. And I want to thank you. Dynamic is the word that I would describe your presentation. And I even put in the comment, don't you love that she teaches teachers? And I really have to thank you. And we have one comment, a great example of a way to value the experience of your students and facilitating them bringing their cultural capital to bear. Fabulous session. Love this. Thank you for bringing EECE to Northwest eLearn. Love your presentation. Can't wait to get the recording and share with colleagues. And yes, I want to say here in Colorado, Bridget is a treasure. She is a treasure for this, for us. And so, and someone raise their hands, just go ahead and type it in chat. Just because we have to wrap up pretty soon, like in 2 minutes. Oh, they asked, where in Colorado are you, Bridget?
Well, I'm at Colorado Community Colleges online, but where I live from our morning session is Colorado Springs, Colorado.
So any other comments or questions before we end? And I want to thank you so much for your presentation, for your energy, for being inspiring, and for anybody who needed a reminder of why we teach. We teach for our students and for them to go out and make the world a better place. I mean, what better like you said, what better reason is there to teach?
Perfect summary, Kay. Thank you all for your time this afternoon, and I thoroughly enjoyed this experience and my opportunity to share with you a little bit of me. And don't forget to keep those mirrors out.
Thank you, and we will stop recording now.